Hello, Americans and people of countries A through Z. There are proofs that Alpha and Omega and Yin Yang were revealed to be taught together. Note how A through Z, A through M are the alpha letters. There are proofs that this is how the ancients taught this. And A through M are the alpha letters. And M through W are the omega letters. And alpha and omega are connected also with the difference of it relative to how nature shows us its complete identity is functional, being manifest as parts of itself, wherein how the rest of its complete identity doesn't fit with the individual, with the grouped, and with the simultaneous parts, as it is presented to us as species body of individual bodies, and all group differences like two eyes, two sexes and the difference of that, where and how it has relativity, the only increasing value of it here or forced from here, with a special difference too that nature uses to show us. Earth has a special difference, and it is our own, but distinctly. The only reason we have self-valued, there are reasons we know plural, but the biggest reason, even more so than a hyperform breaching method, even if it is there are proofs there is one, even if there is not, there are proofs that there was one. It is more practical. Millions of us know that we all agree about things, but whenever we see someone speak, we also see people jump into conversation. Well, I've only seen people jump into conversations dishonestly to keep the same outcome /s with syntax and syntax nature regarding democracy, regarding the republic for which we stand, regarding other people's republics, regarding the cause /s of things. Bach sings the names of the people the sciences were given obligations by nature. That abuse method of them since they were kids, for the same method, from off the campuses too, increasingly, is what to blame. But there's a hyper additional collusion /s and next to and conjunctive to every age and nature of campus, including biomedical ones. And the differences of guilt next to or conjunctive to all ages and natures of campuses and relative other known database identities of relativity and unknown ones that also come with a hyper unknown. But see, at after W, the wall, W stands for wall, like no cell body, cell nucleus, cell wall /s. And the identity appreciating gases and their elements, positive or negative, as the conversation by nature about positive and negative, as the conversation by nature about positive, about power. Nature's identity is power distinctly from how it is might. But nature also shows us it is functional, being hyper invisible, but still discernible distinctly from how it is invisible, but still discernible. And English and other ancient languages were revealed to be taught this way. And many pray, but not just because of natural reasons now. Except for how some things are, like, for example, some things are only natural as criminal insidiousness nature. As nature's means of demonstrating to us another body involved with countries A through Z. Right where and how we've been forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded to entertain other things, others, ourselves. To be like, well, let's just get to the solution for things the breaching method caused, to get that defended wrongly, to get counters of it defended wrongly, specifically exactly the way it needed and maintained. until it's to affect more and more the short words of the people of the sciences obligated to them, which is the same ones obligated to everyone. Multi-front, sickly, distinctly prevented it. This preaching method knew how nature itself would demonstrate to humanity all those like things that James Madison and the unnamed founders communicated about together. See, James Madison is unlike any other president slash chief note, which is cipher to decipher too. You guys can't be honest about things because you guys pretend things that are debatable that are not. Like why and how America's founders did not have free speech, and everyone had to pretend other to an extent slash s. Otherwise, that body was sensed per a method. Don't forget how many sick things they even had: slavery collusions, northern colonies, southern colonies, and they still have our founders framed for that. Our founders left detailed, not to leave them with the words forced upon everyone and upon themselves. You know, they did. James Madison went into details how they didn't want all those multi-front impositions on all his human rights. They went into detail why and how they had to leave even slavery entrenched northern colonies because everyone was being measured by layers of collusion slash s. And there is a hyper-archetypal breaching method tied to it to begin to discern how they have and have had self-valued obfuscations of how slavery had been entrenched in northern colonies and southern colonies. And so just thank God, too, at least we could discern how it was in Europe, too, and in Africa. A breaching method brought little representatives from countries A through Z, only permitted collusion slash S with itself by using them remotely from since before religious messages were born. No one discerned the little magic trick of exploiting the phenomenon of how only locations, areas, and states everywhere the human species body has a body. Only they could operate the phenomenon of the names of countries. And relative to how this volume science, nature teaches us about power and might by being what holds us as a forest, identity of unity, identity of difference, distinct from the other species bodies, but non-distinct from them, and simultaneous with them, but also per that which is a further distinct identity of simultaneous nature, while it is non-distinct. And it is only increasingly valued that way. Nature is showing us that it values three parts of itself distinctly. It prefers them distinctly, but equally. So where one is increasing value that way, it increases the value of the other parts of itself. And because nature is showing us its identity is functional, being hyper invisible but still discernible distinctly from how it is. The invisible but still discernible as the parts of speech of English grammar. Anything that can be named is only about the invisible but still discernible part. As it is itself the identity that is all things. As the invisible but still discernible, again, the parts of speech of English grammar. Why and how we need to appreciate more than one word for a verb, for example, and why and how. Two of those words are the participle natures, and why how there were only two of them, just like there were only two sexes, two eyes, two like two value progressions with water in its elements and gases in its elements. And all of this is about relativity slash hyperrelativity. See, this breaching method has the names of the sciences individually grouped and together, and then further as grouped nations, even easier to torture them, extort them. In fact, tribute to enslave, therefore physically. And right where and how all natures of wealth, all natures of poverty, has them as collusion slash us with differences. Speaking about wealth, poverty, leaving out what our founders communicated about the many different natures of wealth there are. And forgiveness. To discern how nature would answer this, we have to list all the different reasons it's important forgiveness at the same time. For example, where and how non-forgiveness has been collusion slash S with all sides of criminal and civil cases. With even when not involved with the cases or the things that go before courts, with all ages of people. They're involved with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, body dumping spots, tactically juxtaposed originally and still totally distinct natures of organized crimes and methods of them first. That which generated this, don't forget, is a predicate acts with facts method slash S. That if anyone wants to debate that changing what black people's whites of eyes fully communicates, anyone wants to debate that having black pupils whites of eyes is proof that there is relativity slash hyper relativity. And many of us sensed when we were growing up. Use slash S of theory syntax as collusion slash S, where we know we understood the reasons, we know all the excuses. See, this breaching method gave A through Z real excuses of differences. Names of the people of sciences, therefore the branches of government too. But it made them use those, and it keeps everyone using those excuses the way it needs people to explain that. Like, in other words, there's a quality of fact tribute nature that's forced criminally foreign influence slash hyper criminally foreign influence with black and white, let alone with black and white issues in black people's whites of eyes now left out. Because that's right where we have, even though our founders are left out and replaced. And that's gotten away with pretended debatable because of how the breaching method taught the campuses at countries A through Z to an extent, just like it designed more than anyone else. Through them to themselves too. The people who designed the suburbs still today, they are collusion slash SB and haven't been used remotely through how they were child abused. Relative to how James Madison detailed things about how our founders, plural, and himself, he wanted nothing to do with all those affronts against every woman, native, against every native, every human difference. We are hyper native pure. By the way, Native Americans. That's why and how people have the audacity. Like, even there's a whole bunch of people fake things too, because how many books and people associated with them in their campuses, certain type of victim slash hyper victim would depart from off the campuses, increasingly needing hyper additional collusion slash S that is timed and built upon with each age and nature of campus. And the breaching method showed them how they already used excuses the way it needed to. And it knew that nature would demonstrate that too. It uses and has used such things to trap everyone. In other words, the names of the people of sciences before anyone would go into the position where they would even have the information, and they have everything obfuscated. So this is inseparable from any proper treatment of American history, but we don't have it at campuses A through Z sickly distinctly, but also sickly non-distinctly for a function by the breaching method. That which used the algorithm slash S of this volume slash volumes science that shows us we are an individual species body distinct from other species bodies, while non-distinct from them and simultaneous with them, but per the relativity slash relativities, plural. to the hyperforeign. So there's a present participle, past participle, for example, as two of the names hyperadditional for a verb, and relative to why and how we need more than one word to appreciate more than one word for a verb. The present participle being with the present in the past participle. Now, no, also nature teaches us about time and by showing us correlation with a number of things at the same time. Nature, we know when no matter who we know the other people and even animals to an extent. They know they know the hyper invisible but still discernible past to an extent. You know the past was real, and with that, the body of all nature shows you that you know there's more of the past that you know you don't know about, but you know that it was, and you know that records were not legitimate, and you know that is pretended debatable and being and having been gotten away with. That's relative to where and how people's conversations are jumped into dishonestly. How that was is gotten away with is relative to a predicate acts with facts method that uses and has used the differences of guilt, collusion slash S with its breaching method at countries A through Z. So after the body, see, we are temporary slash lasting space nature. And we're coming left to right. And this is English was revealed to be taught, to teach about the identity that the sciences share and where they appear not to. How anyway? There is that which is not our species body, it's not the other species bodies, but it is showing us that and how it is all things anyway. If we make art, it is the difference between the smallest finite detail or the order of the finite or the order of that which is active and or grouped and or the order of that which is simultaneous. Where and how, like, for example, there are these three parts of time that are simultaneous that we know to an extent are only increasing value, like the value of seasons that are not even here yet, that we know that nature has been showing us our whole lives, the value of them to come, even if they don't get here again, even if we don't get here again to in physics to see it. And this is how the ancients taught this, because this is how nature shows this to us. So I'll donate nature shows, but through my country and through you guys, we'll agree to do things simultaneous and think. In other words, we can get the countries with the nuclear weapons and things like that to agree to put in your guys' bank. You guys hold the banking thing to prove it, and then all of a sudden they're working together, like with a Sunday. We'll do it like a religion. And I'll donate a movie too, idea /S to go with it for nature shows too, like Angry Parent. But this is like, see, real science should only feel like game /S or we sense. But this breaching method reemployed. Real common sense / hyper common sense. This breaching method reemployed definitions of all things like free speech. CBS faked conversations with me with people who have been lying to presidents. And there are proofs that they have collusions with the reports on and the shooting of President Trump and of Charlie Kirk and the timing of it the day before the World Trade Center attack, where collusions with the World Trade Center attack were motivated through roles with the predicate acts with facts method slash S recorded. If we pay attention, just with black people's rights of eyes, we have means to discern. But it's too easy for just anyone to jump into someone's conversation dishonestly, including people with badges. Interagencies, they are worse than criminal incompetence. They have relative delusions too when they pretend we need to have faith. And relative to why and how they describe why and how people are angry. You guys are refusing to get on paper legitimately since everyone was a kid. There are confessions made through communications with this preaching method consciously maintains without anyone realizing a country's A through Z. It deciphered what your founders in other countries and here in America, what our founders, plural, unnamed, and James Madison directed us to understand. And why, how, the way they told us to understand. James Madison and the plural founders directed us to understand, not to entertain anyone besides. James Madison pretended as one of their names pretended known. Because anyone pretending that is self-value collusion slash S replacing who they actually were and why and how they had to use James Madison's plan. They're replacing that plan with some fake narrative about, and they have to pretend others, so they pretend to be against dictators. Replacing what our founders communicated about why and how they had to leave even roles with slavery, northern colonies and southern colonies, already having been entrenched. They had to leave it entrenched. You don't vote on slavery. That's what James Madison communicated. They didn't have the right to speak up about things like that. Everyone didn't have the right to do anything about leave all those subjects. Okay, we're going to have to see the women's rights separate. We're going to do the natives' rights separate. We're going to deal with the black people's rights of eye separate. Tactical military from how nature shows us to appreciate a special difference in value progression here, or it forces our difference from here, a special difference. Not the rest of Earth. The rest of the species bodies don't have criminal foreign influences, let alone criminal foreign influences slash hyper criminal foreign influences and self-value collusion slash S. Everyone against themselves and others. Otherwise sensing for the breaching method, anyone trying to adapt with syntax, including if that body is a majority of people, including if it is any united country, easily adapted to for how it plays and played everywhere, every country's locations, areas, and states, operations of the names of the country, the species bodies, replacing where and how nature shows about power slash might, where and how we can't help but have it demonstrate distinctly from all other volumes about unity. It's the one that has individual species bodies of a whole bunch of individual bodies forced to be a unity and forced to be independent simultaneously. It has three identities in relationship to itself, to its complete identity relationship to itself, that are inseparable from its individual parts. For your hearts and minds to gain your soul slash S. In value here, we have means here. We have from America to Russia to Ukraine. There are suburbs that while people are being tortured, extorted, and in fact humiliated, enslaved, therefore physically, every single person. It was only remembered too. Again, the causes of that things and what it caused was hid behind and through. The breaching method developed all natures of pretended integrity anyway, reliant upon defenses of that. It shows them they need to keep things blamed on other things other than themselves. Things like the collusion slash S that nature has been showing us since founding. Pounding drums at countries A through Z. Here ends the need. We must train. I'll shadow box. Begin. No, there is one way to fight where everyone wins, even those who lose, or in those we sense. For nature, too. Because it's where evolution's fruits, gifts, means out of nowhere come. Especially differentially where we are, fact, chibi nature. Again, it appreciates itself. Three ways increasingly distinctly, non-distinctly, simultaneously, slash hyper simultaneously. It shows us why and how it is most probable and demonstrable. How English was revealed to teach about how the one identity of forever nature is making more of itself through temporary slash lasting space nature. And we have to make a name for it. But we have to appreciate more than one name. But we also have to be honest with the use of the name slash S. Because otherwise, while our communications with each other at A through Z are unfolding, the breaching method will adapt, but through ourselves too. Because it already had collusion slash S with itself only known. And that was as being and having been shown at L. And this is collusion with its use of different slash S. So people that don't even know each other. And the difference of that is exploited too. So people that don't even know each other, that do know each other, inter and intracultural. There are motivated collusion slash S. Right where no one is motivated to such. Through motivations we could discern, like where and how. We could discern recorded use slash S, unchallenged and not even discerned of criminal insidious nature itself, criminal foreign influences slash worse, natures of positive treatments and negative treatments with syntax nature. I'm not even a lawyer. That's one of the things why and how there's a witch trials place next to Webb House in Old Weathersfield, Connecticut. And they renamed it the Webb Stevens Museum. But then and now they have other communicated at founding locations across the country for our founders. They have the breaching method has defenses of uses of words like research and like statistics. Through and as styles, needs, and natures being used to sense for and to announce for the breaching method. If anyone notes the research locations in the polling locations, they have roles of tactically juxtaposed, tactically distinct natures of organized crimes and methods of them. Forgiveness is because this is what with the black people, all that we know from history. But we know people jump into history if we try to speak about correlation, which we use as lists, tactical ulterior from how we are afforded, we're allowed to appreciate them. And others pretend it's debatable. And they tell us to sue. But Facebook has collusions with the state of Connecticut judicial branch offices and corrections offices and a whole bunch of other countries and the World Trade Center attack, and the Britain Superior Court, the campuses of the Facebook pages with various natures of organized crimes and abuses of each age and nature of kid and an adult. These are people that have the elderly homes at the same time as ones involved with the World Trade Center attack, untimely deaths, years apart, body double spots, all brought up at the same time, various ways recorded. Things confirmed on Facebook, too, about the body double spots by different tied people to it, the different spots years apart, and the serial killer and his jailers and his forced medical doctors, collusions with that crime spot and the names next to it. Foreign and domestic military, the same ones involved from Connecticut, inter and intra campuses, and such crime scenes. And Parks and Recs have people, I don't know the guy's name, a bunch of people at Hartford Hospital involved also with other hospitals. with the triages and mental health care side, where multiple agencies and the differences of guilt, cover ups, styles, needs, natures, also tactically delusions draw too when they speak about people needing to have faith in the people or pretend that there was ever integrity. We have black pupils, whites of eyes to know that the identities of the names of the people of sciences have been failed, to fail us too. The differences of guilt, we must not leave out the breaching method. And if we could do that and then simultaneously stack hyper positive means by making means out of nowhere that no company could be able to do, no, no country alone, but as a human species body with the same plan slash S. And we can make positives out of negatives, just explaining, because people aren't even allowed to all the experts have all things declassified at countries A through Z. They have all kinds of collusions too. Same people fighting with each other right through world wars. All kinds of intercultural and syntax rackets and differences rackets, database illusion stack and collusions with state with all sides of criminal civil cases, the interbranch foreign at the same time. Their campuses, they share the campuses, directed not to say that here, there, directed to be a criminal insidious in its nature. Oh, well, that's science. That's our job. We're the law. We keep that. Never stops being collusions like you. Our founders left us to demonstrate. There was a sick torture, extortion, slavery method, 3 ways manifest. Many ways I tell best boxing. There's not a comparison, though. Because I could say these things, then people like a Judge Napolitano with Judging Freedom YouTube channel, he would understand because he had this replaced. So they have worse than obfuscated and tactically denatured takes on and collusions with those takes on James Madison and on our founders, plural, per a method that has them pretending that's debatable about how and why James Madison's the only president slash chief we know was one of the plural founders. See, we pretend that's debatable is sensing for and announcing for the breaching method. Someone doesn't have self-valid collusion slash S with it, having shown the names of the people of the sciences how to speak. For black people's whites of eyes, for James Madison, for Native, for what was on all against every human difference, North and South, then America's founders were born. For what caused slavery. These things are not supposed to be debatable. They're not supposed to appear debatable. The only reason that is gotten away with. This preaching method has been using the networks to measure and maintain. They frame issues inside of them. They have some KKK theme, Confederate flag theme, Latino theme, Italian theme, inter and intracultural, all kinds of other countries themed too. Same ones, time collusions with identity theft, fraud, slanders, because that's manifest against everyone. Styles of it. That's one of the things it is, where the breaching method replaced and kept and keeps consciously replaced when nature shows us to use the correlation slash hypercorrelation, the relativity slash hyperrelativity that having black people's whites of eyes is all about. Vaccines, but makes us shush to hear. What makes no sound, but prefers the shush sound, boxing. While martial arts, sometimes, or semi, prefer the shush sound. And while wrestling does not prefer the shush sound. And while how they are grouped, but all the sciences are also share an identity. And where and how they appear not to. Comes with demonstration slash S of the same thing. Slash S. Like, for example, how everything is about how it is hyper additional nature. Nature's nature. Nature's complete identity and relationship to itself. Only increasing value here, also positive unto itself, its way, about positive and negative, or it is forced from here. And this is also some of the ways simultaneously slash hyper simultaneously it teaches us about power, might slash might, and might slash power. It is surging through all things, while not as force, but while as a force anyway. In many pray things as what is force. For example, the sub which things. I teach those things that nature shows us projected. So we could have our countries so that everyone has, so we're all on the same page and everyone trusts each other. They make their own version of the movie slash S. And I'll explain the movie, but I'm not going to do it if you guys don't take the time to someone, start to build at least some shadow box, some try, at least some pace, some rest. I tell it best. How long? We move as one. We do temporary moves as a human species body that will make only lasting positive value nature progressions, action agents. Until we'll be able to do things like do like this, check like that. Okay, can we get everyone to grow this kind of some trees? Oh wait, we should have grown that one, and then we're going to carry it to that state or whatever. If it's the same climate or whatever. In other words, or from put it something grow. In other words, but we have to get the whole ocean is polluted. A special difference is going that never comes back. Is one of the things that scientists were obligated to speak for. Nature shows us about extinction, how to speak about that. Instead they say, oh, survival of the fittest. Meanwhile, humanity is the only one, let alone not just criminally formed slash hypercriminally formed, self-bad collusion slash S, right, where it's against themselves and everyone else, but no one cares. So in other words, also, if people deny some of these things, we have Black people's rights of life to show that if people deny things regarding this, they come with demonstration slash S of the same thing. But then people are shown that because other more relative to what I caught them doing with the databases at next to each aging nature campus. How easily the sense and sensibilities are, and how sick with premises treatments and evidence and research, collusion slash S, and data. With how would you know? I'm always being honest. That's how in other words, that's how everyone speaks about that. There are ways to be offensively. You guys are preventing mandated law while pretending other interstates with World Trade Center predicate acts with CBS News and with the FBI, with them next to the Fox Connecticut News, next to WTNH, and with their sources all along routes 3 and Route 175. They are leaking this. They have sequence shift collusions too, putting fake motives, preemptively stealing our names and barring collusions, and then preventing us from speaking about bringing their kids in, fake motives, and collusions, replacing what's actually putting fake transcripts, fake ties to little kids, to the police departments and the courts, with the same families doing this, and with retired police chiefs and their family intimate ties, foreign and domestic military, medical families, all nutbags, getting in the way of people's conversations about the Black people's whites of eyes. Part of the method slash S, clearer than day here to discern. We all care about this. Only there's a bunch of people tied to former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, directly and indirectly, have roles with upskirt nature pictures. And women with child abusers, women judges, Black, white women judges with some Black KKK theme, Confederate flag theme, Latino theme, foreign and domestic military, people involved with the World Trade Center attack at the same time, collusions with federal evidence of crime, child abusers, people with the child porn. The women rolls with it. Same ones involved before the World Trade Center attack with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and Hartford courts and New Britain Superior Court and their family members. I found out it was also the district court and other like Middletown courts, people associated with a Phil Cololo and others, with a former police chief Cintron and 1 years before him, and their intimate ties and families. Per them, too, putting fake identity theft, fraud, slanders, all kinds of falsified police reports, fake transcripts and databases. That people with Sandy Hook involved, I mean, with Sandy Hook, but also with Sound View, involved with the Brian Bonin, and people on Two-Route Highway where it runs into Hangdog Lane, involved with a whole bunch of other countries, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, people with the Board of Education, involved with databases and all natures of crime scenes and criminally pointable uses of databases, the way the hyperforeign shows them used. They should not have hid what I recorded the Weathersfield police, courts, and a whole bunch of other countries doing before and after the World Trade Center attack. And since I was a kid, they hid things from my parents, and they are and have been hiding things from parents intercities, but with some of the parents. And some of the parents that teach in other towns in this town, they have the difference of that collusion / that's with the breaching method or to use it remotely. There are ones with the name O'Neill, with West Hartford campuses, further involved with the principal upskirt nature and whiting forensics, with other houses with sexual and medical offenders of kids and untimely death collusions with them. And a whole bunch of identities that will jump in to defend their identity, the types of law and differences of guilt, where they're all done guilty together with the use of like a whole bunch of different agencies involved at the same time. You guys are also forcing this leaked because they're preventing writing into branch while they're forging and switching names and making and having made confessions. Again, at the same time as communications, as foreign involvement still, overt criminal. See them using words like predicate act. I mean, not like predicate. See them using words like extremism and radical ever since the World Trade Center attack. This breaching method used them remotely when they speak about, when they have syntax regarding legislation. They don't have James Madison right. Forgiveness is right here. Not leave out the breaching method. Not say, oh, see, that person's fault, that person's fault. Get the breaching method that is involved here at the same time. And then if someone wants to blame someone, don't leave the breaching method out. Ray Reynolds will tell you. Ray Reynolds. He went to a campus I went, and it was off of a Valley Crest Street, and there's a Joe DeMoro on that street. He's involved with all kinds of planting evidences with the FBI in foreign countries, and people involved with the databases with sexual and medical offenders of kids, inter and intra campuses, identity theft, fraud, slanders, with people on Valley Crest Street in Weathersfield, involved with the John DeMoro too, and people with the former mayors, not just from Weathersfield, but multiple from Weathersfield mayors. People involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, put me in fake conversations with my family and everyone around me, fake ties to me since I was a kid. Same ones I caught then with the principal child abuser with the Hartford Hospital, with the Dillon family, and people planting evidence on all sides of my house, lying about their motives still. Because I caught them. They know I explained it online before. These are people involved from Connecticut who have roles with the World Trade Center attack. And their motivations for it were the roles with the predicate acts with facts method /S next to each nature of campus. Multiple courts, family members are collusion /S with them, acting tied to the tied to the predicate acts with the database. If I was trying to hurt them, I would hide that from them. I'm trying to alleviate their needs to be guilty and to stay guilty. You guys are preventing mandated law while you're attaching me to interbranch and news at the same time, preventing me speech, attaching me to fake transcripts, fake ties to others, fake nature ties to others, and with a whole bunch of other countries involved, including all those reported involved with the World Trade Center attack. Therefore, also recorded with the whole thing was made up because I was the one next to the World Trade Center towers that morning. Not you guys. Get me off of fake conversations with the news about that. CBS, please do what's right. Get them on paper, one name in sequence. There is one way to fight where everyone wins. Just follow mandated law. Because a whole bunch of people next to you guys also have collusions, as the ones involved too. Further with the state judicial branch offices and conjunctions to it into that, like you guys. And with this police chief Cintron has some Puerto Rican family in Puerto Rico involved with Vito Cardona, per them at Sandy Hook with Sandy Hook campuses. I never saw Peter Cardona in my life. I fought Paul Spadafora. I lost to him in the finals of the Ohio State Fair in 1995. I never fought Peter Cardona lost to Paul Spadafora too. Paul Spadafora is a former IBF world champion. I have to get my boxing license hopefully this year, coming up. But I beg you guys, don't change what people say when they speak about predicate acts like World Trade Center predicate acts. And they're only three branches of government. Don't pretend you can't believe that since founding, too. Three branches of government, why there's a witch trials place next to Webb House. And why it is renamed the Webb Stevens Museum, and then and still they have other communicated for James Madison and for our plural founders than they asked to be communicated for themselves. And that nature itself shows us that we want communicated for them and need communicated for themselves. Because it's not made up. It's the only thing that's not made up. They have our founders framed for slavery. Through the defenses of it, only allowed to be standing in collusions with the people attacking it, and making a fake side and exceptions. Because this breaching method, just one of the things it does. It shows them they need to hide fake exceptions. Like that's what they do when they jump into people's conversations. All kinds of meds, syntax, they've recorded themselves. Interagencies with Facebook, foreign and domestic. They have collusions against their own people there and our own against here. And then further grouped in the differences of their guilt, they have collusions with the breaching method uses of that and of them remotely. Pay attention to what we really think about. It's way worse than a monopoly. What Facebook had and has. Twitter has upskirt pictures, collusion /S, with a principal upskirt nature that Facebook has collusions with New Britain Superior Court, with the FBI, with various natures of federal criminals. Some of them as a former standing chairperson on the Racketeering Influence and Corrupt Organizations Act, Robert Luskin, his co-defendants, and their lawyer in a 2006 district court case. Before the World Trade Center attack, too. They have collusions with the leaders of kids and their kids and people tied to them, involved with child abusers, leaders of kids, years apart, first forest, overt criminal enterprise, private ones, all the countries in the news at the same time, with the same time differences, cover-ups, with more differences, rackets, little tricks, and uses of themselves remotely. How are you? Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. So in other words, we have been in a semi-ancient trap as the human species body of individual bodies. Because a breaching method forces, tricks, hurts, and persuades countries A through Z. The only people who cooperate the names of countries A through Z are locations, areas, and states. It perfected since before religious messengers, doing things to get names, the people operating the names of countries, to blame other things, others themselves, for those things that it did. And if we pay attention to it, pay attention, both our founders at modern countries A through Z and the people did not have free speech, and they both had just to pretend to other at the same time to an extent. Otherwise, they were sensed and it was adapted to. The republic for which we stand in America and in other countries, they're republics. we have been standing for them abridged because everyone is forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded too, again, to blame other things other than themselves for things that nature itself and that James Madison, our plural founders, told us to blame in the breaching method. And they knew that the names of the people of the sciences would force that pretended debatable. And like, in other words, while they pretend that's debatable, they're being used to measure, sense for, and announce for the breaching method. The breaching method that they have self-out collusions with. It told that the campuses A through Z, sickly distinctly, but also non-distinctly, how to speak about our founders. That's how they're framing them right through our own schools, and then with the people who attack them as a framed sides, there are collusions as a fake side. Uh, oh, thank you. That's what I'm trying to say. We could do as a human species body, as the same plan. We can give the countries that have nuclear weapons means to speak about things they don't have the rights to speak about at the same time, so they never figure out how to speak with about threats. But as fakes at A through Z, while they are forced to pretend that other being other than fake. Where they're not fake. Like everyone's a victim / hyper victim of what was entrenched, where it only allowed collusions with the names of the people of the sciences, and with the counters to it as collusion / S with what it only permitted, and and it won't go away unless we admit. So we can give ourselves reliefs to great extents, all kinds of ways. And the nuclear holding nations can give all kinds of when we change the nature of everything, everyone could put their energy. So because the whole ocean's polluted and all the fresh water. But we could afford to do things together to make a nature of infrastructure and identity of grounds, nature of relationship to itself. Water, we don't thirst and hunger to do it through concrete cities where the suburbs were designed. While they were being tortured, extorted, and enslaved, even to an extent more than we have now. They wanted to admit this is the ground locations tactically to nature, identity of relationship to natures itself. And it's causing negative value, nature progression. This infrastructure is not safe. The safety needs the only means to get help if there is danger. You have to self-add collusion / S with its use of all difference / S, all titles, names of people, sciences, even law. Everyone was child abused. Having had James Madison's communications, the plural founders told us, see, people missed this because it was replaced. Even though it's known, we can make this forced to surface. Nature shows us to be separate and to be unity simultaneously. Its way, because it shows us by the individual species body, unity of individual bodies, independence. It is generating that as what is stronger than and more powerful than anything. It's that body that is binding 3 parts of time in demonstration of its body of value progression. Like generating, we know that we know each other, that we already know. We don't even know each other, but we know that us and everyone else knows about there's the value of the seasons that are not even here yet. Nature itself is showing us about the seasons that are not even here yet. It is showing us that a distinct part of its complete identity, hyper invisible but still discernible. It is showing us an extent of the past we know is true always. It's gone, but it's still hyper invisible but still discernible. To an extent now we can discern what is true always. Now there's a part of the past that we know that we don't know about, but we know that it is true always. There's a part of there are a whole bunch of grouped things active that we know we don't know about to an extent, but slash S, but we know it is true always. There are simultaneous things to an extent we know are true, but true always. But there's also a hyper simultaneous nature. Again, we are a human species body of individual bodies. There are other individual species bodies of individual bodies. And we have group differences like two eyes, two sexes. And nature is generating that between species bodies so we can discern its own body of value progression. We have this identity of relativity slash hyperrelativity pretended theory. In theory, it pretended something about math. See, they have the names of the people of the sciences individually grouped and together, taken to defense slash S of what a breaching method knew it could show later. See, there were collusions that no one wanted. There was a collusion slash S. For example, that which had sickly distinctly through different countries and companies, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, terrorists, even roles with torture, extortion, and slavery, northern colonies and southern colonies, sickly distinctly, but also sickly non-distinctly, as a hypersingular method, as this method that enabled itself and is reliant upon other things, others or selves blame for things that it causes and keeps. And so we can do this. So we have to admit that they're forcing, tricking, hurting, and persuading, and have done so, people to need to value natures of industries, natures of wealth, only permitted if they're breached. From how and then the debate about it, because in other words, until we're using nature's system that shows us how to fix this, our syntax and our plans, because we can make these plans, and I'll donate this game, like Angry Parent, we call it, and then every country make their own version of it, and we get on the same plan at the same time, and we put down hype means to make hyper positives out of negatives. And to learn at the same time the difference between making a criminal and citizen's natures of positive out of negative as that which was only permitted at countries A through Z, not because of countries A through Z either. Specifically, too, for when nature would demonstrate that, it would now be demonstrated through collusion slash S that it could use to show them, everyone, humanity, they need to hide the same things that nature's showing, because nature shows us. A human fact sheet nature breaching method is one of the things all those sick, distinct affronts on humanity were about. They were value as at the same time. What do they value as at the same time? A human fact sheet nature breaching method. That's why it's so important to understand why and how. This has stayed, even though James Madison declassified about this, the words everyone was forced to pretend to an extent. That's still forced on them by the breaching method. How infrastructure unfolds across the earth. Why from America to Russia to Ukraine, the suburbs look almost exactly alike. The suburbs were designed before America's founders were born. They were designed to force people to value. The only means to cause positive value nature progressions, acts, and natures more and more to self-value criminal and citizens natures of positive means to cause positive value nature progression. Acts and natures meant to be syntax that way. Appreciation of criminal and citizens natures of peace, etc. Criminal and citizens natures of war, syntax. Thank you. So it's not about who knows the most, because like people who know the most, they've missed this. But this is the first most important thing, because no one had free speech. Everyone had to get behind James Madison's plan and those plural founders who enabled. It wasn't George Washington alone with some retired generals didn't have means to counter extort people. There were more than 13 colonies entrenched, northern colonies, southern colonies. They had to counter extort key people, northern colonies, southern colonies, and give them no choice but to have to go against the laws, which made them instantly in deep trouble. But they had no means otherwise, so they had to rely on the unity given to them by James Madison and the unnamed founders. See, but those people who were forced to help because they were tortured, extorted, and enslaved, too. In fact, cheap nature wise, therefore physically. So they're making everyone see that people have only heard of this person saying this person's right or the because cover-ups are uses of exceptions and of exception nature, tactical ulterior from how nature uses it. Being being an identity that is no other identity of volume is like nature's volume science, except for how all volumes are. Science, all volumes are, even ones made up. It is distinctly the word of the finite, the order of the word is active group, what is simultaneous. Where there is subjects, we can only appreciate subjects to a finite to an extent, or individually, and grouped or active and simultaneously to an extent. But with this, we can discern that there's what is more finite than what anyone could grapple with. And there is with that which in the order of the finite, by nature itself, that which generates things between species bodies so we can discern. It generates all group differences, all group difference slash S rather. Otherwise, it demonstrates when we were, when we are, and the moment we will be using systems abridged from its own. That's a part of where what and how we really what we are observing. Where and how we are shown that we with the extent of the season's value that are not even here yet. Nature wants us to be not so we could go buy some plastic bottles of water and tell some people stacked in buildings in New York City to go get a job and have those jobs the nature of jobs they are, and then pretend that that's value where it's not. Democracy, too. The Republic, too. It stands a bridge, vaccines. So all we have to do is admit these things because it's our country's A through Z. Here ain't the need because we have blamed each other, others, ourselves. Otherwise, that's relative to where and to how we are sensed, including if we are a majority of people, and including if we are any united country, and this is adapted to. It's part of the means to discern it. That's why none of the countries speak about stacking, things better than free to change the nature of the things, even though the whole ocean's polluted. And the breaching method used, the pollution as part of the torture, extortion, slavery method. It wasn't just because they knew, because there was a race for war and because it was unfolding that way. We didn't have possessions of ourselves. There was a race because everyone had to defend themselves from the breaching method. And the only way they could do that was following orders by the plan of James Madison of the unknown founders, rather than those who will keep our founders framed for slavery. Even though the only founder we know, James, the name of specific was actually our founder, James Madison. He and the other founders directed us to not pretend that we know the names of any of them besides James Madison, the one who detailed how the breaching method had affronts on everyone and had done it through time. And then no one wanted all the things against women, but then they're going to have to speak up about it in internationally monitored conversations relative to the collusions with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, terrorists, international companies. They didn't even get along with themselves, let alone the other countries' ones. All the hide behind and through. The hyper-archetypal criminal enterprise. I'm not even a lawyer. Lawyers, all sides of criminal and civil cases. They have failed Black people's rights of eyes. outside the crime scenes, further with the state's judicial and corrections officers, with the same sequence shifts and news at the same time and layers of other, to keep things pretended complicated that are simple, and to keep things simultaneously pretended simple that are extensive. And then when they were complicated, those differences are exploited because the simultaneous nature slash hyper simultaneous nature is being and has been gotten over on through each identity of integrity. The names of the people of sciences, for example. This breaching method measures and maintains self-guided collusion slash S, even with the most brilliant experts who will change, and then their benefits will come out, and this will help them if we do like the angry parent and the things like to describe, like for example, how our names are being used through an as systems tactical ulterior from the one projected by nature, showing us a human species body is a forced unity, and we can only operate its body one way, slash S. It has not moved since some ancient times. That labeled ancient now. But again, there are three times of parts of time. And nature shows us that there's only a semi-nature of the past that we could discern properly. Okay, thank you. So in other words, everybody train, shadow box, some pace, at least some try. Please, and think about the human species body plan. Nature showing us where there are countries with wars, and exceptions relative at the same time. That the whole world helps the nuclear holding weapons and all these things, fighting countries, put down some things that will change the nature of things. In other words, it's ridiculous. And we all can discern this. The only reason things appear to be debatable and how that has stayed so long is relative to what is in our country sickly non-distinctly. But it has collusion slash S. We have to discern simultaneously to discern the breaching method. And it is with databases where it is manifest, but that's hyper additional from where it was is the first use of location slash S, everywhere the human species body is. And everyone collusion slash S sensing for it and announcing for it. All individuals grouped and all humanity voicings. Otherwise, that body was sensed. And we all could counter sense this. It knew that nature would show us means to. That's why we have to have forgiveness too, because people are only permitted to entertain natures of wealth, natures of industries needed. Like we have to have plastic bottles, apparently. Yeah, I mean, there's things we can supplement things and do things better than free. Here, Anthony, but we have to be on the same page with the same plan. People can't be honest with their takes on capitalism and on communism and exceptions like socialism. That's recorded too. That was used to show them. They need to hide how the breaching method told them to speak for the sciences. The most brilliant people. That's how they have failed to attend to how the breaching method reassigned black people's rights of eyes. Little kids were supposed to understand this from the youngest age. Instead, they have our founders framed and replaced. And replaced the founding plan and story with those forced by the breaching method to be pretended at the same time, where James Madison's plan forced them at the same time, counter-extorted and forced to start to get free here at Tennessee. Don't disbelieve. Thank you, people.